Good morning.
Good morning.
Those of you who are hearing this tape may catch a background of children playing outside because this is Labor Day in Hawaii and all of our doors are open and all of the children are on holiday. And otherwise, I'm sure we will have a very quiet morning. You will notice that the revelations that have been given to me appear in the message of the infinite way in specific form. I have not revealed the experiences that brought these forth, feeling the time had not yet come. But the fruitage of the experiences have been given to you as specific principles with instructions for embodying them, practicing them, eventually living them. For instance, we had a class in San Francisco, and the theme of that entire class was my conscious oneness with God constitutes my oneness with all spiritual being and idea. And this was incorporated into a manuscript and is now incorporated into books published in the United States, England, and beginning to be published in other countries and languages. Now, if you were to study this book with that theme in mind, the book is Conscious Union with God, you would eventually understand what you have witnessed as the demonstration of the infinite way. In other words, you would understand how one individual alone with this message, without a background of money, an organization, promotion, or advertising, could eventually carry this entire message around the world and witness it published by great publishing houses in the United States, in England, in foreign countries, in foreign languages, without any attempt to draw anyone to this message or seek any followers of it or hold them in any memberships or dues. And yet what you have witnessed of the worldwide activity of this is the actual demonstration of the principle revealed in that book. My conscious oneness with God has made me one with every one of you who has been drawn to this message in any part of the globe, because I have not humanly sought you out. I have not humanly advertised for you. I have not humanly proselyted or allowed anyone else to proselyte for you. Therefore, you, wherever you are on the face of this globe who are studying the message of the infinite way, you have been drawn to this message and to me because my oneness with God has made me one with your spiritual identity, and we have become one. And in the same way, my conscious oneness with God has resulted in my oneness with all of the funds necessary to conduct a worldwide activity without asking for it, without pleading for it, without taking up collections for it. My conscious oneness with the source of all life, God, has raised up publishers where literary agents never could succeed in getting them. And so, you have actually witnessed in the experience of the infinite way the demonstration of that principle. Well, you follow each one of the writings, the books, and you will find the same thing, that each class has brought forth some specific principle, which, when we embody it in our consciousness, leads us still another step forward to our spiritual goal. Just a hurried recollection, in 1956, we had karmic law revealed, and we had the secret of the Sermon on the Mount revealed. In 1959, we had the letter of truth as applied to spiritual healing. That is, impersonalization and nothingization. 1960 or 61, we had the raising of the Christ in you. And so you will discover that step by step these revelations have been given to me, and then through classes and writings have been given to you, each one of which must have brought about a greater spiritualization of your consciousness, what we call the peeling off of the onion skins, the refining of consciousness, the purification of consciousness, and each book, each class, each principle taken into our consciousness has prepared us for the one ahead. Well, we have known since last year, since 1962, that 1963 was to be another period of initiation for me. But of course we had no knowledge of its intensity or its length or the nature of the message that would be revealed. But whereas always, since my first spiritual experience, living in two worlds has been difficult for me, living in that higher consciousness and then coming down to earth, going back into that consciousness and coming back down into earth, it has always been difficult for me, but never as difficult as this year. And therefore, it is not unnatural that this year should reveal a higher unfoldment, a higher consciousness, and all the way through the talks which have been mimeograph throughout this year, you will find that something has been breaking through, leading to a message of going beyond words and thoughts, going beyond the mind. I think you'll find all of those terms and expressions in the manuscripts of this year. And so it is not surprising that as we come to the final steps of this revelation, that it should be revealing to us the nature of life as it is lived when we get beyond the mind and beyond thoughts, beyond taking thought, beyond reasoning. And so in these past 3 weeks, while at the very high point of this initiation period, we have been experiencing a revelation of the nature of Sabbath and of grace. In these latest manuscripts and in all of the tapes that have been made now in 1963 since this unfoldment a few weeks ago, you will find that we are being led to the highest point of consciousness that the infinite way has revealed, and it would seem that it is the high point in the revelation of both Moses and Jesus, and probably also that of Buddha. And so we come to last night, Sunday night, September 1st, to a revelation that poured itself through me for 2 consecutive hours. And it started with a reminder of the nature of the middle path of the infinite way. The fleshly sense of man cannot enter the kingdom of heaven spirit. The healthy fleshly sense is as illusory as the sickly sense. The sense of good man is as illusory as the sense of bad man. The middle path, or spiritual consciousness, does not engage in exchanging the sense of erroneous man to the sense of correct man, but knows only the spiritual man or the Son of God. In our healing work, we are unseeing or unknowing the corporeal sense of man, the physical sense of man, well or sick, rich or poor, good or bad. Now just remember, we are not unseeing or unknowing a corporeal man or physical man, for there isn't any. We are unknowing or unseeing the corporeal or physical sense of man. The corporeal sense is our tempter. Our healing truth is our consciousness of incorporeal man and the universe. Melchizedek, Christ, who was never born and will never die. This is the true man. And that which we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell is our false sense of that man. Therefore, you are not a false man. You are not a fallen man. You are not a physical man. But we entertain a false sense about the man you are. We start on the spiritual path to learn the truth, study the truth, and practice the truth. We never attain the goal of realization until we reach beyond the mind and its knowing truth to become the truth. That which I am seeking, I am. On the Mount, high consciousness, Moses realized, I am, and thereby became, I am. There remained still a sense of Moses. He speaks of himself as being slow of speech. But the realization of I am prevailed. And he led the Hebrews out of slavery. The finite sense of Moses could not enter the promised land. Jesus was not the only Hebrew rabbi who knew the truth. All of the Essenes knew the same truth. But Jesus realized and became the truth. I am the way. I am the truth. Still, a sense of Jesus remained, because he says, I can of my own self do nothing. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. And this sense had to be crucified, as eventually it must be in all of us, or we will not ascend to the promised land or spiritual identity. Had Moses been able to crucify the mortal sense of Moses which still remained, he would have been able to enter the promised land or heaven. Jesus' realization of the need to crucify or rise above the seeming mortal sense of self enabled him to make the ascension. The ascension is always the same, a rising above mind, above knowing the truth, to truth itself. In all of our classwork, probably even in the writings, I have said to the students that I did not understand the crucifixion of Jesus, or why it took place, or why it had to take place if it had to take place. It puzzled me, and I have frankly said so. And it wasn't until this year, when I myself went through the experience and the resurrection, that the whole scene was revealed to me of the crucifixion, the reason for it, the need for it. Somehow, after the experience, the memory of that passed from me, and I could not bring it to conscious recollection again. Until some weeks ago, when I went through the experience of ascension, the entire scene was revealed to me again. And this is what I saw. In Jesus' statement, "Thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me, and I am the way, the truth, and the life," he reveals that he had attained the goal. I am the way. Thou seest me, thou seest God, for I and God are one. But there was an experience in which he proved it. He took 3 disciples to what is called the Mount of Transfiguration, which again is high consciousness. And he revealed to them the Hebrew prophets who were supposed to have been dead. But you see, they aren't dead. And he proved to them that they are alive and that they are here in form. Whether he translated them into visible form or whether he translated himself and the disciples into invisible form makes no difference, because it's the same experience. He translated. He proved that I can lay down my life and pick it up. I can walk into the invisible realm and I can walk out again. For I am spirit. I am the way. And so from this, I know now that crucifixion was not necessary for Jesus, and he could have avoided it. We read that Moses was translated. He did not die, did not know death. If this is true, he did enter the promised land. But his followers weren't aware of it because he was not corporeally present with them as they continued their journey. But he must have entered the promised land, because the promised land is the invisible life of the Spirit, if he was translated. Enoch was translated without knowing death. Elijah was translated without knowing death. Isaiah may have been translated without knowing death. And therefore it was shown to me on this occasion that Jesus could have translated without knowing death. But when he became aware of the betrayal, the trial, and the threatened crucifixion, he chose to accept corporeal death in order to reveal to his disciples that death is not an experience, it is an illusory sense that must be seen through, that must be understood. It is not a condition that you actually go through. No one has ever died. There is no death. God has never arranged for a death. God has no pleasure in your dying. Therefore, death is an experience only of corporeal sense. the sense that tells us we are physical, mortal, finite. It is never an experience of our own being. And by permitting himself to experience corporeal death, he revealed that there is no such thing. And he revealed himself in what appeared to be the same old corporeal form with all its wounds. Then, having served the purpose, he had no other function here on earth. His continued presence could only have been an embarrassment to the disciples, to the church, to Rome, and probably to himself. And now we find that he is translated. He ascends out of corporeal form, is translated, and you can interpret this to mean that he rose out of the mind. He rose above his own mind, because it is only in our mind that we entertain the corporeal sense, not in our spiritual faculties. In our soul faculties, we are spirit. We see each other spiritually, whether we are here on this plane or whether we are looking at those who have gone to the other plane, and those who are not yet born. Now, the purpose of this revelation, given me last night, is, of course, the proof of the message you have been receiving this year, that there must come a rest to my people, and there must come a rest from the activity of the mind, taking thought for our lives, fearing for our lives, constantly knowing the truth in order to avoid some experience. There must come a rest, a Sabbath. And in the Sabbath we live by grace, because now I do not know the truth. I am the truth, and truth reveals itself to me. It is not an activity of my mind. It is soul revealing itself. And so just think that when you reach that place where, instead of searching for a truth, feverishly reading or studying for a truth, that you can relax and rest in the truth without taking thought, without speaking or thinking. Be a state of awareness, and then discover the meaning of man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And you will then discover that every word, every feeling, every emotion, every thought that comes to you from the deep withinness of you is what you now live by. It guides, it directs, it sustains, it protects, it goes before to make the crooked places straight. our ultimate goal must be to live in God and through God and as God. Otherwise, how could the Master have revealed, "Take no thought for your life"? Life is to be lived by grace, without might, without power. It is to be lived by every word of God that we receive in our consciousness. In our teaching, we are feeding the students with all of these words of God that have been revealed to us, for them to take into their mind and bury deep in their consciousness, until they too rise above the level of the mind. To where they can live without taking thought. Be receptive to the still small voice. For God is not in the whirlwind. God is not in your problems. God is not in your thinking. God is not in your books. God is in the still small voice. And you see how quietly and peacefully we have to live within in order to hear that voice, to receive its impartations, to receive its grace. And it is for this reason that in these weeks we have also been given the fact that there is always a sufficiency of God's grace present for this moment, and therefore we only have to be still in this moment to receive a sufficiency of grace for this moment. Throughout the message of the infinite way, the goal has been the attainment of the realization that that which I am seeking, I am. The goal has been rising above the mind, because, as you will read now, as you go back to the writings, it is said over and over again that I did not think up this message, nor invent it, nor create it, but it was received, and always it has been received through listening, sometimes in periods of initiation, sometimes on the platform while giving lectures and classes, but always while in a state of receptivity. And I know that that state of receptivity is my hidden manna. It is that which produces all that appears as this message and all that has given this message around the world. And now you will discover this as you have learned to work hard and long with the principles of the infinite way. So you must learn to stop doing this, sometimes for a day or two, and say, let me not trust in my mind, let me relax in God. When these principles are embodied in you, your soul begins to feed you. But until you really have that hidden manna, keep on with all of these principles that we are going through. But do not make it an 8-hour day. Take time out to work in the garden or read a good book or perhaps a good novel. Never believe that the infinite way is trying to teach you to mentalize. This is necessary only when you are learning the truth, when you are feeding consciousness with the letter of truth. We want no student to live by affirmations and denials, because that is not living by the grace of God. Invite the soul. Your soul overshadows you as you sit or walk or sleep. Relax in it, without words and without thoughts. The Infinite Way message has been leading you to the place where you live without words or thoughts. The fruitage of abiding in these principles is a period of rest, and this is the true meaning of the Sabbath, which Moses gave to the Hebrews. The Sabbath he gave the Hebrews was a period of rest forever. Labor for 6 days, yes. Labor to know these principles. But then you come to a place of Sabbath, which means for the rest of your days you live by the grace of God, by my Spirit. Eventually you come to a place where you do realize, oh, I is God. And the word that it imparts to me is the bread, the meat, the wine, and the water. You are then entering your Sabbath. When you have attained quietness and confidence, you have entered the Sabbath. See what happens on the 6th day. In the meantime, his disciples prayed him, Master, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat, that ye know not of. Do not go to the city. Do not go out and get it. Rest in the Sabbath of I have. I and the Father are one, and all that the Father hath is mine. No words, no thoughts, no might, no power. You are in the consciousness of Sabbath, and you need not go out and get meat, for you have it. By what virtue? By virtue of I and my Father are one, and I know it. For 6 days you have labored to train yourself and study. And those 6 days, remember, are many, many years. But there comes a rest to my people. There comes a Sabbath, and that is when you stop all of your metaphysical struggling. You stop and relax and let grace live your life. So when you come to the 6th day of your exercise, just smile. I do not have to pray for anything. I already have hidden manna the world knows not of. Do you see how the Bible is veiled, and how it takes a transcendental consciousness to unveil it? The mystics do not hide it. Words hide it. There are some of you students here in Hawaii. There are other students in California, Chicago, New York, England, Holland, Sweden, New Zealand, South Africa, who are in the 6 days of labor. But the few who have been listening with the inner ear to the message of the last few months must be entering the period of Sabbath. When a person is in the Sabbath, they will say, I do not know any truth. The only truth I know is what is coming through today. I cannot live on the quotations of yesterday. As far as I am concerned, I am in the period of unknowing. I am living in the period of unknowing every day, when I go within only to receive the manna for today, to listen for thy voice. You can recognize when a person is in the Sabbath, because they realize thy grace is my sufficiency for this moment, and they are satisfied. They are resting not only in the assurance that thy grace is my sufficiency, but that there is a sufficiency of thy grace. You can tell when a person is in the consciousness of grace. They have settled into a consciousness of peace. The 6 days of struggle is over, and today I refuse to labor. Then whatever is to come through comes through. Remember this: your study has taught you that everything in the infinite way is a spiritual interpretation of Scripture. Because of this, you can go back into your own consciousness and draw out the spiritual interpretation of these passages. It may come in a different form than I have given you today, but the principle will be the same. Wherever you students are, those who are ready for the Sabbath, prepare for it by learning to rest back in this realization. Let my soul take over instead of my mind. Then every time you go within, something new and fresh will come forth. The infinite way says over and over again that it is not so much a teaching as an experience. And now do you see what it means? It is a teaching, of course, but it is a teaching that is intended to take you through the 6 days of labor, of thinking, of knowing the truth, of searching for truth, of pondering truth, meditating on truth, until you go beyond words, thoughts, the activity of the mind or intellect, and can rest in quietness and in confidence, because you are now no longer living your own life. Now every word that flows from God into your awareness becomes the bread and the meat and the wine and the water. It becomes health and strength and vitality and all of those things that are necessary for our experience. Again, the infinite way has said that the reason we are on earth is to show forth God's glory, not our own. It was never meant that we should glory in our wisdom, in our art, in our science, in our skill, but rather that we should recognize that what appears to the world as these is not really ours, but His. My doctrine is not mine, but His that sent me. In other words, all that the Father hath is mine. And I'm showing forth God's glory, not mine. I am speaking in the message of the infinite way, God's message, not mine. I am showing forth as the prosperity, success of the infinite way, not my prosperity or success, but His glory, His grace. For it is repeated to you 1,000 times in 1,000 ways that only His grace has raised up students, publishers, money, travel, workers. Probably no one in the entire message of the infinite way knows as completely as I do that this whole activity and message is truth itself expressing itself. God's grace and God's glory being revealed in human consciousness. Probably nobody is quite as aware as I am of the fact that I myself could never have done it. But this is only so that you may know that in your life and your activity, your business, your art, your profession, you too must realize that the nature of your experience is that God may be glorified, that God may speak through you, or God may sing through you, or God may play through you, or God may act through you, or God may do business through you. But always that it is God functioning through and as your individual being. You see, in all of us, there remains a finite sense of self, which in the last analysis must be crucified. Moses had it in that feeling of his unworthiness. Jesus had it for a great while in his feeling of, I can of my own self do nothing. I have it definitely in this knowledge that I could not bring forth or function the message of the infinite way. And each of you has it in the measure that you believe you have a skill or a wisdom or an art. In that degree, you still have it. And in the degree that you have it, ultimately, that will have to be crucified. Until, in the end, you can realize, I do not have any truth, I do not know any truth, I do not have any skill, I do not have any art. I am the truth, I am the art, I am the skill. And in that moment, humanhood has died, and Christhood has been born in its fullness and revealed in its fullness. And the ascension or translation can take place. Again, you find this repeated throughout the message of the infinite way in passages that say, it is the personal sense of I that must die, the personal sense of I that must be crucified. Then all of our studies, all of our knowing the truth, all of our healing ministry must eventually lead us to the period of Sabbath or grace, which is the full and complete surrender of self, that God may live on earth as he is living in heaven. The two become one. There is no longer a man in heaven and a man on earth. The man who came down and the man who went up are the one and the same. There is no longer a kingdom of heaven and a kingdom of earth, but the kingdom of heaven is made manifest on earth in oneness. Then it is in the realization that I, God, is individual consciousness, mine and yours. And that in the realization of this, I turn within. This is the function of meditation. I turn within so that I, God, reveal itself through the Word to I, Joel, as long as there is an I, God, and an I, Joel. This is getting very close to oneness when I, God, and I, Joel, can sit in the same chair and commune with each other. It isn't as close as it will be someday when I ascend unto the Father, thereby become the Father. Those students who will realize then that the infinite way is a revelation of God revealing himself on earth will, of course, understand that the purpose of it, the function of it, is that you may go and do likewise. For if I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. If you keep thinking of this as the demonstration of Moses or Jesus or Isaiah or John or Paul or Joel or anybody else, you will miss the fact that each one has demonstrated this in order to reveal the universal nature of truth. In the higher teachings of India, in the Advaita, this is revealed, that I am that I am thou, thou art I. This is revealed. And of course, what always puts the veil back on is that those who are not yet attained, those who have not yet come into spiritual awareness, into the demonstration of their spiritual selfhood, always love the message so much and become do-gooders and go out in the world to spread it around the world, and they haven't got it. And then it becomes lost because truth can only be revealed by truth, not by a human being. Truth can only be revealed through the soul faculties, not through the mind. And so whenever people start to go out and teach truth through the mind, they are preparing the generation for another period of the absence of God on earth. It is always the do-gooder that gets in the way of spiritual demonstration. The do-gooder or the egotist. It is for this reason that when you have an organization, you must have a certain amount of people as teachers and so forth, and because you can't wait for those who are spiritually attuned, you take the nearest to it. But it is because we are not organized that we can be satisfied if we find 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And if we never have more, it will make no difference, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 can do more for this world than 10,000 unillumined. Therefore, let us be watchful when we would seek to teach, or let us be watchful when we seek to be taught, that we be sure that those who teach are showing forth the fourth dimensional consciousness and not merely some knowledge picked up out of a book. Then we can prevent what has always happened before, the loss of truth, through the ministry of those who had not attained spiritual illumination. Remember that this rising above the mind, above words and thoughts, does not eliminate the mind or words or thoughts. But we are not living by them. For instance, was there not a day in our metaphysical background when we lived primarily by affirmations? And by our affirmations, we hope to bring out harmony. By our words and by our thoughts of truth and our statements of truth and our remembrance of truth, we brought out harmony. But in the days of the Sabbath and grace, this is no longer true. We do not live by words or thoughts. We do not take words or thoughts to live by. We are living by grace. But the activity of grace can come to us in words and thoughts, as words and thoughts, and then I impart them to you in words and thoughts. I'm not living by those words or thoughts. You are not living by those words or thoughts. I am living by the grace that produced the words and thoughts. I am living in the Sabbath of resting from declaring words and thoughts to receiving words and thoughts and letting them flow, filled with the Spirit of God. The Holy Ghost is in them because I didn't think them, I didn't make them up, I didn't arrange them. I let them flow through me. Therefore, these words and thoughts are with power. These are the thoughts of God that make the earth melt. These are the words of God that make the earth melt. And they still come through the teacher. But all you have to do, really, is to remember how many times you affirmed statements of truth because it was going to remove some error or bring forth some harmony. And how many times you pondered the truth for that same thing, and you will know then that you are living by words and thoughts. Sometimes words and thoughts out of books. But not now. Now, you live by grace. And that grace appears as the message which you may speak or write. And because it is a message of grace, people hearing the word or reading it get healed, have their lives transformed. This happens over and over and over again in our work. Thank you.